during alleged pandemic, and those some of those stories, they are quite shocking, to be honest. So I want you to learn what is going on. If guys, if you can, I will start from Nick. If you can introduce yourself, where you're from, what you do, who are you, and why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ray. Well, yeah, look, my name's Nick. I'm from Melbourne, and I've been harassed by the police effectively for refusing to close my gym down. That's how it all started. The police came to my gym. I refused to close because I studied law, and I have been studying law for years. And when I say I study law, I don't study at a university. I'm in a number of groups where we study law. So I check what goes through Parliament and to see if it's in contradiction to other legislation. And if it is, then I know it's not valid. Or that's one of the ways that I check whether it's valid or not. And when they gave themselves these extra powers, I actually looked at the acts, and I saw that they didn't actually have the powers to shut your business down at law, but that's what they were seeking to do. So what I did is I refused to do it. And I publicly said I wasn't going to close my gym. And I said, look, I'll close if you accept liability for my losses, because a basic principle of law in this country is liability. You know, if I have a dog jumps over your fence, eats all your chickens, I'm liable for the chickens because you're at loss. So I said, if you can, and then they came with two people, two officers, and everybody that was in my gym ran out the back, jumped over the fence. They were so scared, and that shows you the state of affairs regarding our government and our police with the people. The people are scared of our government, so that shows we don't have a free society in Australia. We have a fat society where we have a lot of stuff, but we don't have. It's definitely we're not free, because if we were, we wouldn't be so scared of the government and the police. I went and confronted them with a friend, and I basically said to them, look, I expressed that they were outside of their powers, and I quoted a number of High Court cases, and I had some notices on my fence and on my door that had the High Court cases and the High Court rulings that give the adequate precedence for me to be able to defend my property. It's mine. I have title here. Then they left. I ran a protest the next day at my gym, and it was just a small protest, but we did a video. We're doing this because we can, and rights are something you need to exercise. The next day, 22 police officers and a member of the DHHS, which is they're like the authorised health officers, came to my gym, and they tried to, and we filmed everything. They tried to arrest me. They said, well, you're committing an offence, and I had an argument with them for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and in the end they left because they weren't able to win and establish that they had they couldn't establish a point at law that I was in violation of. And I said to them, look, I'll accept whatever you say if you can provide the evidence that I've committed that offence. But I don't believe you can, because it doesn't exist. And because I know that, and that's good to have knowledge, right? Because knowledge is power. What they were relying on was consent. So what they were doing is threatening me. Well, if you don't let us in, we're going to arrest you. We're going to arrest you. And I know that what they're doing is they're trying to get me to say, well, I don't want to be arrested, so go in. Then I've given consent. So it's a trick. It's the same in the UK. That's the same system. Okay, it works the same way. It's a Lex Victoria jurisdiction that they're operating under. And so then they end up leaving. We made another video. So we've made two videos there. They went viral, but we put captions in there explaining what we were doing step by step at law. And they got a lot of traction. So then I was just harassed. I was actually followed into the car park of the shopping centre where I go shopping, and I had police harass me there. And then I was at a protest where there was a police officer said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm just exercising my rights. And she said, you can't exercise your rights. And she must have, I don't know, she wasn't thinking straight, because everybody was filming at the time. And then people shared that video over here. So then I became more of an enemy for the police. And then they set me up at another protest. I went to help a woman that they grabbed and were dragging away. And I didn't use force at all, but then the police used force against me, and then they ended up arresting me when I tried to defend myself. And then that was all over every news channel. And all these people are ringing me saying, "Are you okay? What happened? Why did you punch a police officer?" And I never did punch a police officer. Why did you do this? And it wasn't true. You put someone in hospital. So I didn't put anyone in hospital. It's all lies. And then we found out the lady that was arrested that I went to
Did you
help.
have, sorry to interrupt you, did you have any evidence, like for video footage from your gym or CCTV? Or they just
Yeah,
blatantly lie that you've
no,
attacked them?
they blatantly lied about me punching someone, but this was at Parliament in the city. This particular part. This was another event. So this is like all these are all different days, and then they tried to get me to even. And this is how bad it is. So the police arrest me, take me back to the station, and then they say to me, you know, well, we've got footage of you punching a police officer, and I said, no, you don't, because I didn't punch a police officer. And all the media, I found out after that every news channel said that I had punched a police officer, but it wasn't true. And there was some that said I put one in hospital. And I was a professional fighter. I had 39 professional fights. I run a fight gym. So if I wanted to do that, I could have. I had the capacity to. So then they, but they still try. They knew it was a lie, but they tried to pin me to the lie. So that shows the honour and the intent of the police to actually say, we've got footage of you punching a police officer. And then when I said, no, you don't, that's a lie. And in the end, they went, oh, okay, no, actually, we don't. We've just got a picture of your hand coming up. Oh, yeah, so you tried to trick me. That's the kind of character and integrity you have. You don't have any integrity. And we had a bit of an argument there, but that's what they're doing to people. So we do not trust the police in this state. The police are terrible in this state, and they're actually worse than some of the other states. We just have a terrible, tyrannical government. Then after that, I was arrested at the train station because I went to get on the train with my son to go pick up some things in the city, and two what they call PSO officers. They're not police; they're just below police, but they have some powers like police. And they arrested me for not wearing a face mask. And I said to them, I have an exemption. And they said, well, where is it? I said, I don't have to show you anything. It's of a private nature. And they don't even know what the word exemption means. An exemption doesn't mean a legal document or a document from a doctor. That's not what an exemption is. An exemption is just a lawful excuse that can be a document. It doesn't have to be a document. It's just a lawful excuse. And that's what and that's actually all you need is the exemption. You don't actually need a document.
It's the same in UK. You just need literally card that you're exempt, and you don't have to explain yourself, because otherwise the Disability Discrimination Act contravenient. So I would ask you, if I will start questioning you, I would be asking for your personal details, which you don't have to provide to me, whatever I am, whether if I would be policeman or a person at the supermarket door. I can only ask you if you've got mask or if you're exempt. That's it, but I can't question. So it is same.
Exactly the same, but the police here don't, and the PSOs don't know that. So we have a Privacy Act, which basically is exactly the same as what you just said with the Disability Discrimination Act, which says that an entity must not disclose your personal information, that your consent, and then you have privacy as well. And so I don't want to give my personal information to people that I don't know and trust, and I know that they're up to no good. So I just don't want them to have my personal information. It's of a private nature, and I told them that, but they didn't listen. And I actually believed that I would have been able to communicate with them clearly and concisely enough to convince them that actually I don't need to provide any evidence to you. I don't need to. I don't even need to speak to you if I don't want to. So they arrested me, handcuffed me in front of my 8-year-old son, and that's when it became really personal, because they did that. Now, if I didn't have my 8-year-old son, I probably would have ended up having a punch up with him, and I would have hurt probably four of these PSO officers. But I wouldn't do that in front of my son, because you don't want him to go through that shock. But if I wasn't, and it was just me and them, that's how it probably would have gone. And I would have been justified.
What happened to your son in this situation? Police arrested you, but what happened to your son?
Well, they arrested me for not wearing a mask. I said, but I have an exemption. And they said, well, we don't believe you have an exemption, right? So basically they've made the assumption that they've made a medical assessment of me with no medical training, that I have, that I don't have a medical exemption. That's what they've said. You don't have we don't believe it, so we're going to arrest you and handcuff you in front of your son. This is how deranged and stupid it is. over here. We have a bunch of police that are the most ignorant morons doing things. We have some smart ones that don't do this as well, but we've got some idiots that are willing to go out there with their guns and their weapons in gangs and commit offences against the people. And then there's obviously a big percentage of police that don't want to do this, but they're being directed to do so, even though in the Police Act from Victoria says that they have the duties and powers as a police officer a constable of common law or police. That's their powers. And then if you look at the legal dictionary from the Australian legal dictionary, it says that a constable cannot be directed by the government as to who he or she can prosecute. They are answerable only to the law, yet they're being directed by the government because they're government directives. So everything's wrong here. Everything is wrong.
I know. Do they have power trip, or do they see this? Do they see benefit of doing this? Because this will backfire. UK is doing same. They're setting people against the police, but police don't see how they're being played. Society stop trusting the police. They're used
I think what the real issue is just ignorance, because they don't know the law. The police are used to getting their way because the people have been ignorant for so long. So the police are used to getting their way, and they've been given extra powers, and they've been told to get a job done. And everybody's liable for their own actions. This idea that, if I make a mistake, it's on the police force. They'll pay for it. They're going to deal with it. Insurance will pay for it. That's not actually correct. You're personally liable for everything you do. No man can pay the price for another man's sins. No one can, if I commit an offence, I can't go and get my friend to go to jail for me and do the jail. So this is the thing, that they're just ignorantly going, well, I'm just going to do what I'm told because I believe them. Okay, so it's like blind faith. And when you question them and you say, well, actually, your own act says X, Y, and Z, and they go, whatever, mate, and then they'll just go and commit the crime. That's actually what's been my experience, and I've had a lot of experience with the police since the lockdown occurred back in March, because I remained open and I publicly did it, and I wouldn't stop, and I kept running meetings.
Are you still open as we speak?
Still open. Yeah, still open. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for introduction, Nick. I will let other guys to introduce themselves and talk through their stories, and then we'll be discussing overall issues, because you're very knowledgeable. You understand the law, and that's what actually neither politicians don't seem to apply, neither police. They don't seem to apply to their very own rules that they are setting up. So we will discuss this in a minute. I just want to rest of guys to introduce yourself. Who are you as a human beings, if you can let us know?
Sure. So I'm William Twig, and so when all this kind of first happened, I took everything as seriously as possible, and kind of, as you said, Radek, at some point it started to not really make sense, and it was one of the things where I began to. It wasn't until we started to see here in Australia, we were being told that we weren't allowed to protest by our police on the news. Daniel Andrews has said that protesting is selfish, and it started to really. I remember at one point thinking, I think we're about to lose our right to protest entirely, and that was when it was a big concern. So we started to see one protest that happened on September 5th, and I decided to go to that one. And at some point, it was at the Shrine of Remembrance, and I stood up on the shrine and I gave a bit of a speech there. And ever since then, I've kind of continued to go to some of these events to be able to lend my voice. I studied justice for a couple of years, and because of that, I was like, all right, well, I understand the duty of care that we're supposed to be seeing from police, which wasn't met when we saw kettling used at Cup Day recently. And I've got a lot of people close to me who have struggled from a variety of mental health issues. And when this lockdown first happened, I instantly thought to myself, so many people are going to kill themselves. And the mental health impact has been completely ignored here in Australia. And as Nick said, we've seen police starting to do behaviour that is just completely unacceptable. At one of the protests, which was on the 23rd of November at the Shrine of Remembrance, I was giving a speech there, and the police once again circled us entirely. They didn't let anyone leave out of the circle, and at that point, I was giving a speech, and I said to people, "We're not here to direct our anger towards the police. We're here to, direct it towards the politicians that have taken our rights away and done it in the name of our own safety." And at that exact moment, I got grabbed by police and thrown behind the police line, and yeah, it's one of those things where I was placed under arrest, and that was the first time I've ever been arrested in my life. And it was because I was trying to speak up for our human rights here in Victoria. And I've seen people in my life, close friends of mine, impacted. Their mental health has been impacted. Some of them are becoming suicidal, and they're fearful as well. Everyone is really scared of the government as well as police at the moment. I've had one of my friends say to me that after there was a video that went viral of a mother being arrested in her home in front of her children after she had tried to organize an event for a protest on
I watched
Facebook.
I watched this, and it was being said that she didn't even organize; she just shared the post.
Yeah. So when I saw that, that was when I was like, okay, I think we're about to lose our right. And one of my friends, after seeing that video, he said to me that he's scared to even share one of my Facebook posts because he's afraid he's going to get a knock on the door. And because of that, he's not going to be able to see his children. So people are scared to even speak up on Facebook because they're afraid that that's going to impact them. I had another friend where I said to her, if you suffer from mental illness, then you have a medical exemption for a mask. You don't have to be wearing it. She said, I'm struggling to breathe. I'm like, well, then you don't have to be wearing it. And her immediate response was, oh, well, I remember seeing the video of a woman being choked by a police officer because she wasn't wearing a mask. So that is the level of fear that we have. And there are people, after what happened when people got kettled at a peaceful protest outside of the Victorian Parliament on Cup Day, people are even more scared to be able to approach police after that. I've had someone say to me that they feel like if they were out one night and they didn't know where they were going and they were, lost, that they wouldn't even feel safe approaching a police officer to ask for directions. So that's the level of fear that we see throughout the community. And I've tried to do my best to be able to bridge that gap a little bit. I've tried every single time I've been at one of these protests, I've said to people, we're not here to to argue or anything like that or to yell at the police. We're here to be able to be heard. We want to actually make sure that we're being heard by the community. And now even our media does their best not to interview people at protests or even to show the speakers, because it's like they're doing their hardest to make sure people aren't being heard, but that's why everyone hasn't stopped continuing to make their voices known as they can and going to all of these events. So yeah, I've been trying to do my best to raise awareness for human rights here in Victoria, because it seems like a lot of people don't appreciate what their human rights are worth, and they don't realise that once you give up your human rights, that a government doesn't often give them back.
Is government changing law? Because here in UK, government is introducing measures that will actually remove or they will change Human Rights Act. Now UK is leaving European Union, so they're saying that this is changed due to Brexit, but we are concerned that this is a bigger agenda behind this, and they're working to remove Human Rights Act.
We've had some pretty concerning legislation pass through, and it's been passing through different states. So because every state's basically been in a state of emergency, they've all been passing through legislation pretty quickly. And because the members of the public have been so overwhelmed by everything going on, they can barely pay attention to it. Everyone's very focused on what restrictions are easing or how low the case number is and stuff like that. And they're not realizing the legislation that's being passed through that's taking away the rights of their families. Here in Victoria, we had something passed called the Omnibus Bill, and we managed to get it amended to remove a certain part, which was going to involve future crime, where if someone was considered to be high risk, let's say because they had gone to a protest, then they would be able to be assessed as someone who's likely to go to another event like that, which could then make them likely to catch COVID, which means that they should be placed under detention for an indefinite amount of time. It only depended on what the authorized officer felt was appropriate. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, if this passes, it was massive alarm bells. And I'm someone who, my great grandmother came to Australia fleeing Nazi Germany, And with the way that we've seen some of these things happen here in Australia, with the laws that are being passed through the state of emergency, it's very reminiscent of early Germany in regards to the way that it started to fall into that system. And the compliance that you've seen throughout members of the community is also really concerning in regards to the way that they don't, even people who are able to kind of do the research themselves into whether it be law or some of the scientific things, we have this just trust in authority where, especially here in Victoria, we constantly hear, we've been listening to the experts, and we have members of parliament saying that the government still hasn't provided that evidence to justify some of these restrictions that they've put in. At Cup Day, we actually had a member of parliament getting arrested simply because he was there to see what was going on. And because of that, he got kettled. On Cup Day, we had people being held there for 4 hours, basically in a 30 degree Celsius heat. There were people who were passing out from heat stroke, and they only got out of there because they were on a stretcher. And the police just stayed in silence. I was one of the people speaking there, and I said to the police, like, we just want to be able to march. If you're not going to let us march, then where do you want us to go? And we got no response. We were just told to stay there, and anyone who tried, the police were, after I got arrested, I said to the police, I got someone there who's still left in there. What am I supposed to say? And they just gave me no response. A police officer literally said to me, I'm not here to have a conversation with you. And so even after that, I went and spoke to the police and said, all right, well, I need to wait for my friend. What am I supposed to say? And where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to say? And they couldn't give me any conclusive answer. There was something about it where they were just refusing to speak to anyone there that day, especially. And even in regards to mask exemptions, people who have a medical exemption, you're only supposed to say, I have a medical exemption. But a lot of the times, there are still people the police will still ask you to present it. And under the DHS guidelines, which is the government agency which is putting in these rules, it says that a police officer doesn't have to ask for it, and that you also don't have to get a medical certificate or anything like that. But yet they still ask for some kind of document, which for people who aren't entirely aware of that, or who aren't aware of how to speak up against, to be able to defend themselves when speaking to police, it just becomes overwhelming, and they're just likely to get themselves in trouble. I even said to a PSO, which is not, it's a like a certain branch of the police that focus on being at train stations and stuff, and he said to me that well, actually no, if you don't present it to us, we can give you the fine. It's just that then you have to prove that you had the medical exemption afterwards, and that's not the case. So there's some officers that don't understand the law, and there are some that clearly do understand the law, because they'll ask for a document, but when you say it says under the guidelines I don't need one, they just go, yep, no worries. And so why are they even asking if it's no worries? It's really concerning. And for people who, for example, anyone who has a mask exemption for a mental illness or something like that, like even someone who's, because they have panic attacks or anxiety, they maybe struggle to breathe in one. How are they supposed to defend themselves against a police officer or something like that if they already struggle to speak up in other areas? So it's putting a lot of these rules are putting some of the most vulnerable people in really difficult positions in which they're just forced to comply, because otherwise they're going to feel like they're going to be put under arrest, whether it be violently or given a fine that they can't afford. And it's just, I'm doing my best to try and reduce some of the fear that we're all living in, to try to mend some of the ties between it, because if the police don't do a little bit more to repair the trust that's been damaged between the community, it's going to take years to repair already as it is. And I think it's really important for us to start raising those concerns. And people here in Victoria, a lot of them defend some of the actions that are going on. So I'm doing my best to try and help other people to understand some of the things that we need to appreciate, not take for granted, and try to learn from history as much as they can. Because with my family ties that have, with my family history in regards to my great grandmother fleeing from Nazi Germany, I would never want Australia to turn into a country like that. And a lot of people just aren't aware of how it progressed into that over time. A lot of people think that it was just like it just snapped their fingers and all of a sudden it's just this terrible system. They don't realize that it's a lot more complicated than that in regards to how it progresses.
I'm originally Polish and I live in UK, and I can see like British people they're so trustful to the government. Do you think it's just a case because like their history was easier and they don't have this memory like you've got because of your origin?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons. For some reason, here in Australia, it may be because we've never had a dictatorship here in Australia, but there are lots of people whose families have immigrated here, and they can see the alarm bells, they can see the red flags, and a lot of them, some of them are so scared because they know how far it can go that they feel like they're too scared to even speak up. Then there's a lot of people that the level of fear that has been put into a lot of people here in Victoria is just insane, and it's because of that we see such a lot of people here in Australia have this attitude of, oh, she'll be right, mate, in regards to just don't worry about it and it'll work itself out, and they don't realize that when a government's starting to take away your rights, that's not something that you can just kind of brush off.
Great, thank you for this introduction. Paula, if you can tell us something about yourself.
I'm going to keep it short, Rad, so Nate can get in and have a chat because you know a lot about me anyway. Basically, I'm from London originally, living here in Melbourne.
Oh, well, we got like 12 hours difference, by the way. So just for guys watching in UK, it's the middle of the night for you guys, right?
Well, 20 past 9.
Yeah, not too late.
I've spent most of my time.
Can you speak a bit closer to microphone?
From Australia.
Sorry, can you just get
most
closer?
of my time? Hang on a minute. You can't hear it. Can you not hear it, Rad?
Yes, we can hear you. It's better if you're close to. Yes, just be closer to microphone. That's fine.
I can't get any closer. Is that better? I don't know where my
yes,
microphone
that's better.
is. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Basically, I've just spent most of my time feeding information from Australia to the UK, where I come from, to friends in Europe and family and anyone that really wants to listen, and feeding the information back again. That's basically what I've been doing most of my time. I'm not going to really talk much more because I'll just say a couple of things about like the PSO office. It's more of a they're really the people that didn't really make the police force. That's who they employ as a PSO officer. I really ain't got. I'll just, to be honest, I don't really want to say too much because I want to, the other guys I've spoken to you at times through feeds, but you're probably not sure who I am. But I just really want to, for the time wise, I would like Nate to just get on and say what he said, because really what I've all been doing, I haven't made it because of medical reasons, haven't made it to rallies, but I'm behind the scenes connecting people and sharing stuff and that sort of stuff, as I've done tonight. So away you go, Nate.
Yeah, thanks, Paula. Cheers. My name's Nathan Willoughby, or Nathan Kyle is my alias is on Facebook. Alarm bells started to ring for me probably 2 weeks into the start of this pandemic. I initially, like Will, I was like, okay, it seems like there's something going on. There was an initial lockdown, 14 days to stop the spread, I think it was. And so, we went into lockdown, and then, of course, that extended further and further and further. And then ever since, there's been more draconian measures, legislation put in. We've been sort of forced to accept certain things under the guise of this pandemic that we wouldn't regularly accept. Alarm bells started to ring for me a couple of weeks into it. I come from a background where in my spare time, more of a hobby than anything, I tend to research conspiracies. For the last couple of years, I've sort of honed in on the Jeffrey Epstein saga and what happened with him. And then when things started to turn sour with this pandemic and alarm bells started to ring, I started to look into it and research. And I quickly found that this wasn't just about a virus. That this itself was being used as sort of a quantum leap in terms of the plans of the social engineers that we find at non-governmental organisations like, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations. Of course, in 1992, there was the Sustainable Development Goals that were set out there at the conference in Rio de Janeiro. You've got world leaders now like Justin Trudeau talking about the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, as it's commonly referred to. You've got the World Economic Forum now, being very public about the Great Reset, which was launched in July, and that sort of agenda as we head towards a future where artificial intelligence plays a major role in our lives, and sort of this transhumanist agenda that was set out in 2015 by the World Economic Forum with the Fourth Industrial Revolution. So that's sort of been my focus. I have had multiple interactions with the police here in Victoria. I was down at the protest on Cup Day, was kettled, saw what happened, saw the brutality of the public order response and the disregard that they have for human liberty. Just the soullessness of these police officers that we see, that we try and have a discussion with, an interaction with, and we get nothing back in return. They're just following orders at the end of the day is the response that we get from a lot of them. It seems, a lot of them enjoy their positions of power. This is not to say that there aren't good police officers too, because there certainly are. I'll tell you a story actually. On grand final day, I had a few mates around at my apartment here. It was only about 6 guys that were over at the time, and I had a neighbour actually dob on me and say that, he didn't even confront me, just called the cops on me. And I had the cops rock up, and they were pretty good about it, to be fair to them.
Someone got echo. Yes.
I don't know if that's me.
Do you have second tab open?
No, I don't. I actually don't. Don't know who it is.
You got setting. It's got option remove.
Where's that?
The setting.
Hold on, let's have a look.
Advanced option. Remove echo. Or change what is your microphone.
I don't know if it's me because I've got.
Hang on a sec. Let me see if it might be me.
Try again.
Try talking. I'll mute myself and just see if that helps.
Yeah, I think that's better. So on grand final day, I had a neighbour dob on me without confronting me. The police were good, to be fair. I was out on Swan Street that night after the grand final, and the police presence that was there was just absolutely unbelievable. Getting stopped by cops. Sorry.
Which town is that?
So in Richmond, in Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
This was after the AFL grand final. I had mates that were stopped up to on 8 different occasions by police. I mean, it's pretty grit. I think things are opening up now, but you've still got these QR codes that they're introducing down here now, and all these other draconian things. Like, we're still wearing masks. We've not had a case for 23 days, and we've still got to wear a mask. Not that I do that, but it's just ridiculous. And like Will alluded to before, is the government has provided one piece of scientific evidence to back up their policies, which was generated by this supercomputer. And if you read that paper, it's pretty poorly written. Where's this policy coming from? Well, it's certainly not based in science, and obviously there is an alternate agenda afoot there, and world leaders are coming now. The slogan "Build Back Better." It's like there is a shift. So yeah, that's my 2 cents anyway.
Okay, thank you for that. So how's the situation now? In UK, seems that every road leads to vaccine. That's how they're pushing us. So regardless of what is happening, how many tests, cases we've got, we're being pushed idea of forced, not forced as such at this minute, vaccination, but they're already telling that if this maybe this is me this time.
Let me grab a different microphone. I'll be back in a second.
I will try again. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So
it's a microphone.
they're saying that if you will not have vaccination, then you won't be able to attend events. And I was reading news that were actually shocking from you guys. That's first announcement: no job, no pay. That came from Australia, and I was really freezing my blood reading this. I wasn't never into anti-vax movement, but an idea of being forcefully vaccinated for a disease I don't have, and it just doesn't resonate with me well. So that's what is happening now in Australia. The vaccine is the only way out.
There seems to be some toing and froing by the federal government with regards to this vaccine. Scott Morrison first came out and said that the vaccine will be as mandatory as possible, and then there was, of course, public outcry over that. So he backpedaled a little bit, and then I think the same day or the very next day, Dr. Nick Coatsworth, who I believe is the Deputy Chief Health Officer for the federal government, said that there would be perhaps coercive strategies employed with regards to the vaccine, like no jab, no pay, that they would look at certain things like that. Greg Hunt has alluded to this as well. So there seems to be, we seem to be, all roads seem to lead to this vaccine. And if you look at the polls online, it's not as clear cut as 90% of people are going to take this vaccine. It's certainly much closer to probably 50-50. There are a lot of people that I know who are, I'm not anti-vax either. I've been fully vaccinated my entire life. But when you read about some of the stuff that goes into these vaccines, it's like aborted fetal cells. I mean, it's very, very concerning. The fact that it's been rushed, the multiple conflicts of interest between the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation with vaccine companies having a large grip on policy at the World Health Organization. It's concerning. So yeah, here in Australia, they've already started the propaganda about the vaccine too. There was an article the other day, I think it might have been in the Herald Sun. The headline was like, "All I want for Christmas is the jab," or something like that. So the propaganda has already started. To say, like, what they'll probably do, I don't know. But yeah, it seems to be like we're not going back to normal until the vaccine's been administered, which is what Dan Andrews, our Premier here in Victoria, said.
Dr. Fauci, which is one of the leading characters behind this situation, said that even after vaccines, people will still have to wear the mask. So even that seems to be false premise. And on that premise, people are being funneled down to vaccine door. So I wouldn't be surprised if they would announce that everything that they already implemented will stay.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
Nick, I got a question for you because you're resisting and you're still keeping your business open. But like over that's my view of it. That government is really launch onslaught on a small business in UK. So likes of big corporation like McDonald's, they got really head start. They can operate pretty much like normal. When let's say like you got small business, you got gym or similar type of business, and which is highly affected if and then excessive use of force. Did you say 20 police came to your place to lock
Yeah,
it
yeah.
up?
I had 22 police. I had, I had another time I had 15 police cars and the media and turn up to my gym with the media because they collude together. The big companies have a compliance departments, and the compliance departments just deal with whatever they comply with whatever. It's very easy for them. For the small business that struggles to make a living because they don't get any help from the government, and they don't want any help because when you register something with the government, you're basically adding them as a trustee into your affairs. So what they're doing is they're saying, you know what, we're going to give you more work to do, but we're not going to pay you to do it, which is the definition of slavery. So if they say to you, Braddock, you know what, your business, we're going to give you an extra 5 hours a week of work that you can do. You can break it up however you like. You've got to do this extra 5 hours of work a week. Otherwise, we're not going to let you work. But we're not going to pay you to do that extra 5 hours of work a week. And that's the sort of thing they're doing to basically cause people's businesses to collapse. Because I have a gym. So gyms it was just black and white. You can't open. You have to close. Now they've said that if we socially distance correctly, and we sanitize everything, you can have up to 20 people at a gym at a time, as long as you have 8 square meters for each of those 20 people. So for those that have gyms, they know that, and mine's a fight gym, so I do classes, and you have bigger numbers. And if you didn't have bigger numbers, you wouldn't be able to pay the rent. It doesn't work. It's not possible.
Same like for restaurants, they just can't operate at this capacity. I've been to restaurants that in London after protests, after they relaunch, they said they operated at 30% of capacity, and there was second lockdown, and they told me that now they are at 10%. So it doesn't even make the overheads game up. So for them, they will be forced to close because of that.
That's obviously it's a human rights violation. Okay, it's theft. They're stealing from you, and people are going to realise that theft isn't just the stuff; it's your happiness and joy that you have. Your happiness and joy is real. You know it's real. I know if I'm not happy anymore because you've taken away my happiness because of your actions, I'm at a loss. Okay, what's outside and what's inside, they're both real. And this is what they're doing to people, and they're causing people to be. It's psychological warfare, and I don't think I told you before, but I've had police turn up to my house in the middle of the night, including one time at midnight, just to bash on my door. I have four young children, from 9 months old to one just had their birthday. He's 9 now. So
What
I had
the reason for that?
3 times they came just to check on me. And they said to me, it was slightly different each time. It was the same 2 police officers the first 2 times, and they came at around 10:30 at night, and then another one came at 10:10, and then another one came at 11:50 at night. And the 11:50 was to give me a summons for court for the assault that they claimed that when I pushed a police officer over who grabbed me from behind. And all I did was push him, so that's going to be interesting in court. But the other 3 were just to check on me, and they said, "Well, you're a person of interest, and we just want to check up on you." And I said, "Mate, why would you check up on me at this time? And I've only been to one other protest, and I haven't been since that protest when I was assaulted by your officers." Well, then they said, "Well, you've been to a protest, so that makes you a person of interest." And then we ended up having an argument. The first 2 police that came the first 2 times, they were okay to talk to, but it seemed like they were trying to find some sort of psychological claim or against me or case against me. That's why they came at that time, to get me to react so that they could get something on me to create a controversy. Oh, look, Nick's not, he's not stable. We've got to, you know, he's a risk to public health. And this is what they do. They just go fishing. They get told by their superiors, go and get this done, go do that. And that's not what their office is meant to be. That's not what they are meant to be. That's outside of the definition of what a police officer is. But that's what they do. And I actually went into the police station, and I've never worn a mask the whole time. I went to the police station in the city. So that's about that was outside of we had a 5 kilometre distance that you could travel. And that was about 40 kilometres for me. So I just went past that and went, oh, I'm going to go and make this complaint. And I went into the police station, no mask, and I said to them, you know, you've done the wrong thing. And then they said I couldn't even make a complaint in the police station. I said, sorry, we can't take your complaint. So they've made it so hard to get anywhere. It's like a great big loop of bureaucracy where nothing happens. It's done, and it's obviously on purpose so that you can't have any effect and all of your energy is wasted. You go on a big maze and they put you through the labyrinth. And it's not even a labyrinth, it's like an Escher painting. If you've ever seen an Escher painting with the upside down world, everything's all around, and you're going around, and and a lot of the time you just go, you know what, I've got a family, I've got kids, I'm going to have to give up for today and try again tomorrow. And that's how they're wearing us out in this state. And they've done it in a very intelligent way. And because we're so ignorant, and I'm going to say that the Australian people are very ignorant because they've been distracted with sport and work and their own, I guess, their own selfish ambitions, because, you know, you've got all this stuff, you know, I want this, I want to go on my holiday, I want to watch my TV, I want to do all these things, it's comfortable. They're not so focused on being the greatest individual they can be for the people, to be something for the people. They're not really interested in actually even standing up to, you know, to the tyranny. Like the police will say, look, we're just doing our job, right? Well, you know, and I don't know if you're a Christian man or anything. I am, though. And I'll tell you what, when Jesus got to kick the money changers out of the temple, you know, we're going to remember this is your temple up here. And when you're selling your decision making for money, you're going, well, it's my job, so I'm going to make the decision that they tell me. You know, that means they're occupied as well because someone's in their head telling them, running the ship. Okay, they're their vessel. So that's what we're dealing with. Some very selfish people. Yeah, sorry, mate. Sorry, Paula.
I think
is that?
That's all right. I'm just gonna say, I think, Nick, that I found that throughout the last few months that people have said, well, if it's not affecting, they don't understand if it's not affecting me, as in money. I'm not short on money and things like these sort of things. Then why would you be bothered? You know, why bother you? Like, people are just, if it hasn't, the people I've seen online, or even just the friends that I've spoken to, all the people that it's like, I've got a lot in an area that affect people, and so they all sort of, you know, what's your problem? You're living all right, you know, why are you bothered? But, you know, like, people don't care about other people. It's all about their own. I find that very much here in Australia. It's very much, I'm all problem, you know what I mean? Like, they're all right. It's not, they can, you know, they don't seem to realise that, well, we might be sitting in the 30 square home with a big garden, but someone else is locked up in a flat with 6 kids, you know what I mean? And stuff. And
yeah, like there might be those high-rise commission flats where my cousins grew up,
exactly,
and been locked in there for like weeks and not be able to leave and have their meals brought to them back and forth. That happened in our city. You know, they had these apartments which you'd call council flats in the UK. You know, the commission flats, and they just locked them in there, and they had police patrolling the outside and wouldn't let them leave for weeks.
Yeah,
that really
they were treated with less rights than prisoners. They literally have less rights than prisoners that we have here in Victoria, because at least a prisoner is allowed 1 hour of exercise and allowed to have proper food, whereas and they also get mental health care. Whereas the people in those towers, with every single time they said, I'm starting to go, you know, I'm losing my mind, can you just let me out for some fresh air? They get told, that's all right, you can just call DHS, which is the Department of Health and Human Services, or we can get you some mental health care over the phone. But for people who are really struggling, for people who are, you know, imagine being locked up in a high-rise unit on your own for like for over 2 weeks. You barely had enough food, and the people, they had no notice. They were just told, all right, from right now, you're not allowed to leave, and people weren't even allowed back in. It was insane the way that they treat, and they were some of the most
How
vulnerable
many blocks
people.
was it? It was about. It was.
What's that?
It was quite a few. It was a whole.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, yeah.
There were a couple of them.
Explain. Coming from, it was like locking down. It was like locking down like 12 or something, or 8 or 9 high-rise blocks in the middle.
I think it was between 6 and 9 or something.
Yeah, and then they had so
And
many.
they were tall. They were like
They
14-story buildings too.
Locked
Yeah.
down. Anyway.
Yeah, so I lost my train of thought a little bit there, but
What they did,
I mean,
is they
we're losing you, Paula. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, I lost my train of thought because we went on a tangent, and I was on something else, but I went on the tangent with you, so it's fine. But yeah, yeah. So yeah, go on. We were losing you a little bit though. You were cutting out a little bit, Paula, as well.
So situation at the moment.
I was just saying that if I've given you. Sorry, Brad. Find that really that if it's not affecting people personally here in Victoria, or well, I don't know about the rest of Australia, that people just go on with their business, and which is really funny because I thought it's different in Britain, but after talking to you the night, it's the same in Britain also. You know, it's not just here in Australia.
Yeah, and they've it's like that was the tangent that we're on first. Why do you care? I mean, so I was told to go and get Centrelink payments, which is like your dole, and that's what I was told to do by the DHHS because I lost 90% of my business when they brought in the restrictions. Now how's this? So even though the police, I gave them the option. I said, look, if you and it was equitable too. I said, look, if you can provide the evidence to prove that I have to close my gym, because he who makes the claim bears the burden of proof, which is a maxim of law, and I believe that's still valid. So if you can provide the law that compels me to close my business and allows you to close my business down without any liability or even all liability paid for my losses. And not just my losses of the physical needs, but the losses of my happiness, my joy, my peace, then sorry, you're not gonna be able to close me down. You need to provide that evidence. So what they did, they couldn't provide the evidence. So what they did is they would just park their car at the front to scare everybody off from coming into my gym. So they did that for a while, and it was very hard to get people to come into the gym because they would drive past, see the police, and I'd just keep driving, send me a message, say, Nick, I can't come in, there's police. And I go, yeah, no, they're harassing us. They can't provide any evidence to verify their claim. So what they're going to do is you're just going to be pricks and park up the front. And this is when you know that, you shouldn't bear false witness. Okay, you should be honourable. These are qualities that we should be aspiring to, but the police work the opposite way. They will lie. They will say, we saw you doing this, or somebody told us that you did that, to get you to speak so they can trick you when you're speaking, and then I always use the biblical parameters for how I deal with the police. So when they start asking me the same questions over and over and they don't let me leave, I just say, let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. Anything more or less than this comes of evil. So if I've told you what I want to tell you, and then you continue to ask me the same question in a different way, now you're trying to get me to engage in evil with you, and I don't want to be a part of it. And this is what they do. So I've realized very quickly that my biblical way of thinking is not it's not you can't reconcile that with the police because they're completely opposed. And they obviously have an agenda to get something done, and they're ignorant of what their actual role is. And because the people are ignorant of what their role is, we have to have an education. But the problem is they're pushing so fast and so hard with this agenda from higher up that I don't know if we're going to be able to win this quickly. I think it's going to have to be a long-term, battle. And it has to be, people sharing this information. Now, I've been sharing videos explaining how you can use force against the police when they use kettling tactics, because that's illegal in this state. It's against the law. It's unlawful as well.
So can you actually resist if they're kettling you?
Yeah. You absolutely can. And you know, I don't know if I can share, but I can show you some of the stuff, and you could see it with your own eyes, and then I could show you the sections in the Acts that show you.
At the end of the conversation, if we can like leave details, if you want to lead us to your channel, and if you can drop me a message as well, then I will post links so people can actually see.
Yeah, brilliant. And then what they do, so I've been sharing this information on Facebook, and so Facebook, obviously, they censor you, don't they? I share it on my YouTube channel, and obviously I had a Vimeo channel that got taken down as well. Then I had I set up a YouTube and a BitChute, but I use YouTube because it's easier to use than the BitChute channel, and it's faster. And I'm not a tech, so I'm completely tech ignorant. I don't, and I've had to learn all of this to be able to share this information. So that from my will to share this information with people and empower them with a way to defend themselves, because I want to see the Aussie people actually stand up to the bullies, just like you would if your son or daughter was at school and they were getting picked on by the bullies. You would, you know, I mean, we've been conditioned for years at the schools. They'd say to the kids, even when I was a kid, if a bully hits you, go and tell the teacher. So be a victim. But obviously, you know, I was always brought up, no, if they hit you, you hit them back. You defend yourself. So you want to see the people defend themselves. But basically, this flower power movement seems to have impacted the people in this, in definitely in Victoria, and I'd say probably all of Australia, where they're not standing up to them when it's obvious that the police are in the wrong and the government's in the wrong. It's black and white. You don't even need to know the law to know that that's wrong, because you have a conscience. You're just listening to conscience. That's wrong. You've just stolen a year off me, and you've taken away all of the things that I enjoyed, and you've taken that away from me, and now you're threatening to fine me, but you've already shut down my business, or you've caused my business to be at such a loss that I have hardly any money. And I have two rents. I've got a rent to pay for my house, and I've got a rent to pay for my gym. But then I've got to go and get the dole, which wouldn't cover that. And I've got to shut down. I just have to do this without any evidence that it's valid. This is what they do. Now, if you're in Poland, okay, would the Polish people just sit down and just you know, do nothing? I reckon that they would go out and they would defend themselves, and they'd gather as the people, because they seem to do that all the time for different things. You know,
there are protests, but then it is similar psychological game in every country that I'm visiting. Is people who are not affected, they're not bothered, and that's like how we've been cooked. So it means that if I don't know you, then I don't care about you, and that's like broken relation in society, which isn't like it should be. I'm today in Denmark. Yesterday there was a conference rally by World Freedom Alliance. That's organization that consists of medical doctors, whistleblowers, solicitors, politicians who are challenging this. And there was quite a big turnout yesterday. And people went out what they did for the last couple of days straight. They are protesting, and they literally take pots and pans. They walk around the town and they're hitting them. There's lots of noise. They're very noisy when doing this, but there's such an atmosphere. Like people are coming together, and like yesterday when I actually did live stream from that, you could tell reaction, because like other part of people who are engaged with this, they understand what is going on, but most people are living with no understanding what is going on, and they sit like normal at restaurants, and they think, oh, that's just anti-mask idiots or something like that. That's how they've been conditioned in by media. But there was like clear reaction on some of those people. They were sitting in restaurants, but at least they were waving back to a crowd. So that means that they engaged. There was only two people I saw that they were kicking off. They were showing finger to protesters, but overall it was like reaction, like what is going on, because they don't see this at telly. So now all of a sudden, you know, you sit at restaurant, you think that life goes on normal for you, you're not affected, but then you got like 4 or 5,000 people walking with pans and hitting them and shouting for democracy. And I was like really heartwarming to see, because we are all depressed by this situation. It's getting on everybody's case. But then like what I want to conclude is that we need to come together, because like each one of us is individual who is doing something in their own capacity, but then we need general stance. We need stance in every single country. So same like there were protests in Poland, there are protests in Australia, there are protests in UK, but it's not enough to change things just by a way of protest. We need to action this. So there's like general motion that people are fed up, except of guys like yourself, individuals who are challenging this, or is general motion where you want to channel this activism, where you want to challenge the government, like legally?
Well,
I
I
think
mean,
it's why it's
sorry,
sorry.
go on.
I think it's important for us to, first of all, get some of the citizens to be educated on why they need to actually realize that stuff like their rights are important. And then we need to kind of, because a lot of this is, I've noticed, especially because we've been in a state of emergency, the government can make snap decisions, but a lot of it's kind of almost based on public sentiment. If enough people complain about something, the government has to change it so that way they can continue, their restrictions in other ways. So we need people to feel like they actually have a way to be able to speak up, whether it be mass people in the streets or whether it be people trying to voice online in whatever way they can. More ways just to be able to help people to realize that, in a democracy, you have to be engaged. And I've noticed that in Australia, a lot of people are just apathetic about the politics, about laws that impact them. And they try to justify or make excuses for laws that can actually seriously impact them because they just don't want to, cause any trouble. And it's really important for people to recognize that by getting engaged politically and doing whatever you can to raise your voice, that's not anything that's meant to be problematic. And it needs to, I think if we could just get more people to be engaged in whatever way seems suitable to them, that'll be something that can kind of start to make a bit of a difference. And then obviously organizing people to be able to make their collective voices heard all together. But, it still comes from every individual. And when we have, just people in a lot of fear, then how can we reduce that fear? How can we reduce that tension and get people to feel a bit more confident to be able to speak up? Is
We need
something
to
that
have
I
a
think we need
win.
to try and work towards.
We need to have a win, and we need to, because obviously, you've got this issue of love thy neighbour as yourself, and that people don't do that on the mass level, which is the second great commandment, right? So people aren't they're going, it's not affecting me, so I'm okay with it, or I'm not going to do anything. Okay, I'm not going to sacrifice anything. So, but if you can inspire people, because people get inspired when they see people stand against something. Right? People get inspired. You see that.
I think it's better to stand up for something than necessarily against it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, if you can, I think if we organise a smaller group, at a bigger protest, we can get a bigger protest happening, and you get a group to basically go against the police in a lawful, dignified manner, and everything's recorded, because the mainstream media is going to do their hit piece on it. But that's okay, because as long as you can do a counter to that, and then you can send it to everybody one by one as an education. Every mind that you free from the lie is freed. They're not going to go back into it, right? Because they know it. They know that the mainstream media lie. And it's like what they did to me, where they had 22 police cars, a police truck, and the media turn up to my gym the media said that an hour after the police left, they said the police have quashed an anti-masker meeting at a Cranbourne gym. And we weren't even at the gym. We were on a Zoom call doing, and I had this feeling where I needed to not be at the gym. So I cancelled it, and I got everyone to get on Zoom with me, and we're watching the whole thing live from my CCTV footage. Then we did an article exposing them, and we shared that everywhere. Then we went on all these different channels, and we got a lot of views showing how just deceptive the conduct of the police and the media were, including together to make a lie, bear false witness. Now, did the police, rebut that claim and say, that's a lie? You need to, they didn't. They just let it go, and that's how we can fight and things like that. I think that it's power. I think prayer is a powerful thing. When people come together collectively and they start, asking a certain thing and thinking a certain way, there's real power to that. But getting a small group that's on the same page, that knows the law, going against the police when they're committing acts of offensive acts, you just need people with a bit of courage. because you know that cowardice is not a trait that we really want a lot of right now. Courage is a trait that we need more. People are too scared to lose their comfortable little thing that they've got, because they've got all these things, and they go, you know what, the public realm's pretty comfortable. If I just stay in slavery, I don't want to go out into the wilderness with Moses and then have to get my own food and go and get my own water. I want to stay in slavery in Egypt, and I'll just stay there, and I get my house, I get my food, I get, you know. So it's a bit hard sometimes, but I know I'm safe. You know, and that's the issue. I mean, when you get if you look at Fabian socialism, you've got your, you know, the greatest value to the Fabian socialists. And if you don't know who they are, they're the ones that started they're behind the Labour Party in the UK. They're behind the League of Nations, the United Nations, former prime ministers, and even Bill Shorten, Julia Gillard. They're members of the Fabian Socialist Society. And then you've got Tony Blair is a member of the Fabian Society as well, right? So these people, they're number one most valuable thing in that ideology is security. It's to be safety and security, right? Which is the opposite to what a free nation is. A free nation is the most valuable thing is freedom. Without the security, okay, the security's not there, it's the freedom, okay? And what we have now, so our Western society used to be the state's right to prosecute the individual was trumped by the individual right to have liberty. And they were always fighting against each other. Now what was happening is the state's right to prosecute the individual has completely trumped the individual right to have liberty, and the people are letting it happen because they want safety, which means they want Fabian socialism. And that's basically at the fundamental root of what's happening right now, because this is Fabian socialism. Fabian socialism, it's called, they call it gradualism, political gradualism. They wear a nation down, or a people, and then when they're at a weakened point, then they push really, really hard. And we can see that's exactly what's happening now.
That's why I think it's important for us to, as you said, we got to make sure that what's actually happening at these events is being able to be shown to the public, because the media does paint their own narrative of it, and you can even see that, you know, anyone who's there can see what really happens, and anyone who's there can actually paint their own, you know, they can show from their own perspective what's happened, whether it be from writing their own experience or whether it be doing a video of it. I just think that I think it's really important that, especially with everything that people have been through this year, that we don't try and say that this or that in particular is cowardice, because I think that even in a time of where, you know, there's a lot of dishonesty online and stuff like that around us, speaking anyway is an act of courage. And I think that if we can get more people to just speak up that in any way, that'll be something, because in my opinion, there's a lot of psychological warfare going on, and if we want to, you know, challenge that narrative that the media is painting, then we have to really beat their own game in a certain way.
Just 1 second,
really
I'll
important.
mute myself.
For example, at today, even though the media still tried to portray it as something that was extremely violent or whatever, they pretty much had no scenes to be able to show, apart from police just using pepper spray, as well as a couple of people just trying to leave the kettling circle. And as long as we can kind of try and show what really happened that day, the more we can hold the officers who did that in particular to account, and we can also hold the people who made the orders to account. In my opinion, we should certainly make sure that, like, for example, on that day, there was a pregnant woman that got grabbed around the neck by some of the public order response team. So
yep.
I completely understand why you feel like we got to make sure we protect the most vulnerable people. And
that was my mate's
doing
wife.
that, we just have to make sure that we don't give the media anything that they can use against us. I think that it's really important for people to think about how things can be betrayed in both ways, to benefit us as well as to be used against us. And we have to try and remember that, you know, if there are multiple media sources at, you know, whatever kind of protest or whatever it may be, whether it be big or small, because even at Treasury Gardens, for example, there was 17 people in that one park, and they got surrounded by over, I think, almost 100 police officers, and they were just arrested one by one. The force that they're using,
I saw that
so
video, and there was another video which was really disturbing. It was, I believe, food market, and there was police with dressed black with the helmets, shields, and buttons, which was also viral. I saw this, and we're seeing like fragments. That's why I wanted to speak with you, because we are seeing like certain fragments, but we don't see like the whole picture of what it's like to be there. We only see this like, oh, police was so violent in Australia, but this is just a part of the
it's the
general.
societal impact that is really the bigger picture. It's the way that people have been turned against each other, the way that the police have asked on this for people to dob in their own neighbours, having people around, like Nathan mentioned, right? With
That
a
would
neighbour
be
dobbing in.
something which
That's
we
the
refer
society
to.
that we're being told is good. That dobbing your neighbour, you're being a good person. You're helping keep the community safe. And so that's why I mentioned in regards to when we look at whether it be fascist or communist nations and
Yes,
the way that
Nazi
they progress.
techniques.
What was
That
that?
was
Sorry.
Stasi police,
Yeah.
Nazi, like
I saw
German.
I saw one woman who her sister went to
William,
protest on September 5th, and yeah. Sorry.
William, I was just going to say to you, Gardens, I thought that made a really big impact because nobody was violent, everybody was social distancing, everybody was sticking to the law, still arrested everybody.
Yep.
That
It's making them
it's like
every
that when
single
there
one
is
of these
trouble,
protests.
all
People have
sit
been
down and be peaceful.
Yeah, every single one of these protests, people
Right.
have been so peaceful. It is unjustifiable the tactics that the police have used. On September 5th, they had full-on riot gear. At Queen Victoria Market, they had riot gear. We don't see that anymore because they started to look
If you're
silly. They started
watching
to
it, can I be honest with you?
almost look like they were just. So
If you're sitting at home like I am, right? I sit at home like
Yep.
I've got an injury, so I haven't been to any of the rallies, right? And I sit at home and I watch. I've got family that work here, right, in media, in news,
Mhm.
right? I'm on the ball and I'm constantly complaining and carrying on, right? But when I'm looking from here, what they show, I know it's all bullshit, right? When you see it, they're only, apart from the Treasury Gardens, you've even got, you've got people that are swearing and this, and they're only going to show that stuff. One person doing that and everybody else is being good, behaving and being peaceful, but they will catch that. And it's really just trying to get everybody to, when there is trouble, to sit down. Back in the bloody 70s, 80s, they sat down and just, arrest us, but like they did in Treasury Gardens, no, everyone just peaceful. There's no one swearing,
Yep.
nothing,
And that's happened to almost all of them.
So they had
pretty much all of the ones that have happened since September 5th.
We need to do more. And I
By
think
the
we
end of
need
the
to come
day, it just
together.
looks unreasonable. Yeah. And recently we had a protest called
I'm sitting,
Uphold the Right.
Watching. Yeah.
There is slight lag in connection.
There's a delay. That's why. Yeah, there's a delay. That's all.
Just give it like 1 second. There is slight delay. Come on, Paula, you started.
I just saying, for all the ones I've watched, the Treasury Gardens was there was no need. I'm saying, I know there's no need for anything the way they acted, but as someone that doesn't believe and someone was sitting at home, from people I spoke to, they said, "Oh, that was terrible the way they treated the people then." But they haven't said it when they saw a pregnant woman getting picked up in her house. It's just crazy the way people were reading into it from a bit of film and stuff. But one thing I find here is that, as the three gentlemen on tonight, I don't know any, and I've just, from things I've seen on the scene, and you're all great activists, and I just feel that there's so many people that don't come together, and they're all like one here, one there, whatever, and you're all good talkers and stuff like that. And I think that's what they need here, like in London or in Europe, but maybe they're used to it a bit more, but they seem to have a bunch of talkers before they do an event or something. And get your talkers, as they say, talkers, and that's what you're there for, to listen and stuff. And I think that's where we're falling down a bit.
Yeah.
Paula,
that's why
I just want to give you big credit, because people who are in background like yourself, you're doing lots of work in spreading those messages. There's lots of people sharing. So events like, like Nick is making stands, that's the example. But then, like, for it to make it viral, it takes people who actually share this message, who engage with this.
Yeah.
So there's lots of people who are not on the fence, but they can't be like wrestling in the first line with the police, but they're helping tremendously by actually showing what is going on. So that's just a big shout to you and to everybody who is helping with this, because that way we counter this narrative. Like William said, this is informational psychological war. So that's why we need to get the other side of the information across, because now that's a problem. I got education by which I should be journalist, but then if you look what media is doing, they're just a government dupe. They don't even ask a question. They just say this and that.
Yeah.
They don't even question them. Is the method okay? No, they will just report whatever government says. They will just repeat like a parrot, which is no good. So we need to take charge of this, and yeah. So thank you
Yeah, but we've
all
never had
for.
more of a need for independent journalists than this year, after everything that we've had to be through, seeing the way that the mainstream all work together to just say the same thing. Because, for example, here in Victoria, as well as probably every other state, our news media, every single day here in Victoria, we had a press conference with our premier, telling us about, the case numbers for the day, as well as a couple of other things, and answering a few questions. And the media just repeats the same stuff that they say. They don't question him very much, even after the conference. They just, every single day, they're letting you know what it is that has been said, and because of that, everyone just kind of takes it on board. And when you have a society that's in fear of even voicing their criticisms or concerns, that's when that mainstream narrative starts to become the only thing people are hearing. And thankfully now we've seen a rise of independent journalists here in Victoria that are being at the protests and actually showing what's really going on. But it's also really important for every individual there to film as much as they can and show it from their own perspective, because it's there's a you mentioned, for example, Radek, how you've been doing you'll go to an event even if it's a little bit smaller, and you'll try to live stream it as much as you can, so that way even if there aren't that many people there physically, you're still getting the audience, you're still getting the people able to be heard who are speaking. And we recently had something like that called Uphold the Right, which was a kind of it was meant to be like a silent protest, but we had a bunch of people all sitting in a park. They kept it in smaller groups, so that way they're all keeping their distance. And what we did was we had a live stream. So we had the speakers in a smaller group marching around on the beach, giving their speeches in front of the community, handing out flyers, and the people who wanted to be there physically could all do so in a park watching the live stream, so they could still interact with each other. But that way, the police, we didn't have to worry about them getting involved in any way other than just keeping an eye on people. And the person who organised that event got in contact with the police to try and make sure that it be done in a way that would be allowed, and we didn't have them cause any issues at all. When we went for a march, we had 4 of them follow around in like a little kind of cart or buggy or something. I don't even know what you'd call it. And they just kept an eye on us, made sure that everything was all good, and we got to finish the march. And the goal of it is to try and make so that people who have something to say can be heard, and the people who want to be there can show their support, even if they're not able to be there, in person. At least a live stream is one way for them to be able to do that. And we even had a like an Irishman who was from who was I think he said he was a police officer in Ireland for at least over like 13 years or something like that. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head.
And Ed,
And he said, we smaller gatherings every single day in local communities. There could be people just standing on the roundabout making their voices heard. And so how can we normalize just people making their voices heard? It could be a small town or something like that. Something is being passed something's being put up that's going to impact their community. How can they see something that's accepted and embraced within the community? and that will hopefully help other people to feel like we can all come together. Yeah, like for example, we had Black Lives Matter early in the year, and I was there, and there was a massive amount of people there. And yet, I go to some of these recent protests, and I've been saying human rights matter, and then you look at how the people get treated. And so it's, I think that if we can really find, I've tried to think of a few terms that we could come up with that can help everyone to agree with, find some kind of like what is it we can all agree on? Because there's certain language that can be very divisive, and I think we want to avoid that divisive language because it pits people as us against them, and we need the community to kind of come together as much as they can, so that way, it's one of those things where you don't want to be anti something, you want to be, whether it be pro-choice or whether it be, like I'm all for freedom of speech, so someone can disagree with me as much as they want, and I'll defend their right to be able to disagree with me, because we need to be able to have the discussion, so how can we make sure that we don't lose that in our society when so many people are scared to speak up in any way?
I think Nick raises a really valid point in terms of cowardice in today's society as well. Like everyone here in Melbourne has been extremely pacified because, they've got their sport, they've got their beer, they've got everything. And I think in terms of people know, you have an inbuilt conscience, when something's wrong. And now is the time to do something. It doesn't matter how small it is. You need to do something. You need to say, hey, I won't stand for this, whether that's sharing information with your family, having difficult conversations with people. Like the amount of friends I've lost through this is, I've lost count. But it's important that we do what we feel in ourselves to be right and to be important, and we stick by that. So yeah, I think the more and more, whether it's bringing, people together like Paula is, or whether it's attending protests, or whether it's, doing what Nick does in terms of the legal side, and also, him standing up and keeping his business open. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and so much respect for you, Nick, for the way that you've made sure that, like, to defend your business like that, man. And when you look at just how few people even tried to do that, I've got so much respect for you doing that, man. Like, because there really is a lack of people standing up for anything in this state and in this country.
Well, we will be slowly wrapping up because I need to check out. I'm in the hotel. We can reconvene in later date to see what is happening, what is going on. I just send you my email in the chat box. You can drop me your links to your channels, and I will post them with this video. And thank you for coming out today. Thank you for taking that courage to speak in public. I think this is a very important issue. On a note of live streaming, yesterday during the after March, I was interviewing one of activists, and he said it is legal in Denmark that you can live stream police. So this is our weapon now, in that sense, because we can defend ourselves to take a footage. Live stream is good also because if your phone gets confiscated, then that footage will be secured on a server. So even if you lose the physical device, or they will delete this from your phone, or actually you should have some PIN so they don't delete, but it stays on server. So even if you physically lost the phone, the footage, the evidence of what police did wrong will stay there. And you're on point to say that we need to evidence what is going on. We don't have to antagonize police, but we need to normalize those things. It will be long and difficult battle. So
yeah, I feel like this is history in the making, and they would love for us to just not let the book be written, but all of us can help write that book, ourselves as well as together.
Great. So we'll be wrapping up. I will finish live stream now. So you got my email. Please send me details. I will link to your channels, and then we will schedule call later in a matter of weeks to see where we are, what is happening, is there any progress in the situation. Is that okay?
Yeah, too easy.
Sounds good.
Really nice speaking with you all. Sorry that I had
Thank you very much.
You too. Cheers.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
See you later, guys.